Here we are with a little bit of homework help for Unit 3, Lesson 4. In our summary, just really quick, two proportional relationships are represented in different ways. We have to compare them by finding a common piece of information. I hope by now you've caught on to that common piece of information is going to be the constant rate, or the rate of proportionality, and what we're after with this, the constant of proportionality. In this case, when we're talking about two people earning money, we see Claire over here, her earnings are represented as y equals 14 and 5/10 x, where y is the amount of money that she earns in dollars and for working in any number of hours. We can look at this value right here of 14 and 5/10 x, and we can recognize that this is dollars per hour. Over here, Jada's is not so simple to understand because we just see a table that represents how many hours and how much money, but we can simply calculate that by taking any amount of money that's here in this column of an output and divide it by the number of hours, as we see down here, where we recognize her highest value is going to be the representative of $13.25 per hour. So with that value, $13.25 per hour, we can make it into an equation that says the total amount of money earned is equal to $13.25 for every hour that's worked. When we want to compare the two of them, obviously Claire has a higher rate than Jada, but to look at the difference, we see that $13.25 is $1.25 less than $14.50. In fact, over the course of 20 hours of work, we know that Jada is going to earn $25 less for every 25 or 20 hours that are worked. Looking at the homework, problem number 1. A contractor must haul a large amount of dirt to do a work site. She collected information from 2 hauling companies. Easy Excavating gives you the price in the table. And so we're looking at this, the amount of dirt in cubic yards and how much it costs. So the cubic yards, what's the cost? And then Happy Hauling Service gives us this graphic. How much would each hauling company charge to haul 40 cubic yards of dirt? Assume that both pricing plans are proportional. So meaning that no matter how much dirt they haul, you're going to pay a certain amount per cubic yard. So how could we figure that out? Well, again, knowing that these are proportional relations, we know that y divided by x will equal to k. So what do we want to do to figure that out? We want to take any one of these ordered pairs and recognize what those values would be. So 196 divided by 8. Let's go ahead and go to our fancy calculator here. Equals 2450. Just to double check on these other ones, 490 divided by 20. 2450, 637 divided by 26, 2450. So we know that Easy Excavation, their rate that they charge is $24.50 per cubic yard of dirt. Now, maybe not quite as obvious when we're looking at our other company because it's in a graph. So let's follow that graph and let's recognize where we find spots where it crosses these lighter gray lines at integer crossings. So we start at 0, 0, follow the line. It appears that there's an ordered pair right here, a nice one at 1 and 25, and another one here at 2 and 50. When I think about those two ordered pairs, 1 and 25, that should tell me that we're talking about $25 per cubic foot, or 1 cubic yard of dirt is equal to $25 for the hauling fee. We can make sure that that's really right by looking at 2. It should be 50, and we see that done. And so the last thing that we need to do with this, keep our numbers, how much would each hauling company charge for 40 cubic yards of dirt? Well, this one, I'm not going to give it to you, but Easy Excavating, remember, was the one that was $24.50. So you're going to have to do $24.50 times 40. And in this one, you're going to have to do $25 times 40. Calculate the rate of change for each of the relationships. Seems like we've already done that one. Take a look back at the work here and decide how much is it for Easy Excavation and how much is it for Happy Hauling. And then if the contractor has 40 cubic yards of dirt to haul and a budget of $1,000, complete the statement about which hauling company she should hire. She should hire this company because with them it costs this. What you're doing is something we do in the business world all the time. It's called the cost analysis, where we gather the information from the two different companies. We find out what we would call this is a bid, And that way we know how much money we have to charge to our customers in order to actually make money on the job. The next question, question 2. 2 parts to this question. First off, Andre and Priya are tracking the number of steps they walk. Andre records that he can walk 6,000 steps in 50 minutes, and Priya writes the equation y equals 118 times x. Here's where our next set of important information comes in. First off, here's Andre. Let's go ahead and let him be yellow. And he's recording 6,000 steps in 50 minutes. Whereas Priya, let's give her a different color, can walk in an equation of y equals 118 times x. And then here's the common information between the two of them. Y is the number of steps and x is the number of minutes walked. Just to describe her constant rate, Andre and Priya, they both walk for a total of 5 hours. Who walks more steps? I think you're going to have to figure out what Andre's constant rate is. Whereas Priya, we already know her constant rate is 118 steps per minute. So you're going to have to do a little bit of calculating there by how much more per step. Just to help you out with that piece, let's look at this. Let's get Andre an equation. Y is equal to, so his output, his total number of steps is going to be equal to, let's look at this as an ordered pair. We know that x comes first, so that's the number of minutes, making this 50. And then y is the number of steps, and 6,000. And so with that equation, it's not going to do us a whole lot of good to know 6,000 divided by 50 times x. We might want to do a little bit more work with that and actually simplify. We see 120. By understanding that constant rate, what we recognize with this is that Andre actually walks faster than Priya. So you can use those 2 equations. You can figure out what that is, total of 5 hours. If we're talking about 5 hours, remember that x is the total number of minutes. Keep that in mind, that's minutes. So we have to do this 5 times 60 because we're talking about the total number of minutes per hour if they're walking for an hour. So pay attention to those pieces. Number 3. And we want to find the coordinates of point D in the diagram. This is a little bit of review when we're talking about from, I can't remember which lesson, but find the coordinates for point D. If we are talking about these pieces, first part, answer part A, and then part D, well, find the coordinates of point D in the diagram. How am I going to do that? Well, I need to look at a couple of pieces here of this. Remember back to dilation, back in Unit 2, and we talk about this is -6, this is 2, 0. So I'm thinking that this value right here, if this is y, then this right here must be 0, 0. And the question is, if this is 10 units up to here, I should be able to go ahead and go and make some estimates. If I cut this one in half, and I kind of work with these pieces, I can kind of work with that. But I would just be guessing. And I don't want to guess. Instead, what I want to do is use this point right here of 0, 0 to help me out. Because what that tells me is the distance from x, or between x right here, is from -6 and 2. We see that that distance right there is 8 units. And if I know that's 8 units, and I'm going to compare this other side, if I decrease by 2 units, because I know this is the y-axis, that makes the length of this side 6 units long. So the question is, how long is this side? Knowing that these two triangles are similar, they both have 90-degree angle, and they both have a common angle right here, that means the third angle must be equal. The question is, what is my ratio? Is it going to be 6/8, or is it going to be 8/6? Because there's a difference between the two, and then I need to compare that rate to 10 to be able to find this. So I see that my triangle appears to be shrinking because this point right here comes in closer to the center of dilation. So that means that this one is out because that would that would tell us that we have a growth here of something bigger than what it was before. So 6/8 would be one way to do it. Another way that we could do this is we could actually find the rate of change from here to here. And that would also tell us what our scale, or help us with the scale factor. But let's just go with this piece. If we have 6 here and 10 here, then we have to have some of the ratio right here. This is 8 over here. So if we have a slope triangle with 10 on one side and 8 on the other, we can compare that to understand that we have something that's unknown over something that is known. And we can solve for x. Or we can take that value of 10 and multiply that 10 times 6/8, because that's the ratio we're going to make smaller, or 3/4 the value. Either way, go ahead and find that value. Let's go ahead and go down to the next one. We have another situation just like that. Pay attention again here very closely. I'm just going to go ahead and label some things for you. From this point 2, 3 to this point 7, we know from 3 to 7 on the y-axis, this is 4. We know that the length over here from -4 to 2, the full length is 6 units. But again, pay attention, I just covered that up right there. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. We know this is the origin right here, and we know that this is the y-axis. So that means the distance from here to here might be 6 units, but the distance from here to here is only 4 units. So the question is, what is the height of the triangle right here? If this triangle has a slope, or a K, an M, of a rise of 6 and a run of 4, that can also help us to understand that that's the same ratio, or the slope ratio, of this triangle. And so that should tell us that the length of this segment right here should be not 6/4 of 4, but it should be the reciprocal of that, because we see that this is actually shrinking. I know that 6/4 is reduced to 3/2. And so that reciprocal would be 2/3. So then the question is, what is the scale factor, or what is 2/3 of 4? Give that a shot. Finally, this is getting really long. Select all the pairs of points so that the line between those points has a slope of 2/3. So I have to understand which of all of these equals 2/3. Keep in mind with this, that if the slope is 2/3, I need to know that between this point right here and this point right here, I have a rise, change in y, and not just y over x, change in y over change in x equals 2/3. So I have to go like this, and I have to take the y, 3 minus 0, divided by 2 minus 0 equals 3/2. While it looked good from the very beginning, it is not going to have a slope of 2/3. Looking at the next one, they just switch the coordinates around. This one would, but I want you to go ahead and keep going on the rest of these. 7 minus 5 and 4 minus 1. 2 minus -2, 4 minus -2, -30 minus 30, -20 minus 20. Check them all out. They all have to have a slope of 2/3. Make sure that you can go ahead and go through all of those to determine which ones actually equal 2/3. If you get stuck, let me know. I'd be happy to help you out.